the energy isn't like a thorn on a rose inside of you that keeps like poking up and keeps agitating you. And if we can lean into our emotions with absolute curiosity as to why am I feeling this, then that ultimately leads, in my belief, to freedom, to real freedom inside of ourselves and how we operate in our lives and in the world.
Welcome to the Daily Soul Bytes Show. I am your host, Bola Abimbola, frequency alchemist, intuitive life coach, and energy practitioner. Daily Soul Bytes is where we have guest authors, coaches, and entrepreneurs in the fields of spirituality, psychology, and leadership, sharing their insights for the expansion of collective consciousness. And today we have a very special guest, Dallisa Hocking, all the way from Idaho in the United States. Welcome to the show, Dalissa.
Oh, Bola, it's so good to be here. I know we're going to have a juicy conversation. And yeah, I am in North Idaho, not too far from the Canadian border. And it's a beautiful part of the country. So I encourage all of the listeners and viewers to come out and visit North Idaho.
Sounds like a good invitation to me. Wonderful invitation. Let me read your bio before we start, Dalissa. Dallisa Hocking is a fifth-generation psychic medium known for her bold and accurate predictions about global events. She has dedicated her life to helping people strengthen their intuition, understand their self-worth, and connect with the unseen realms. She reaches a global audience with over 10 million views and a 250,000 plus social media followers. She believes intuition is the ultimate superpower and loves helping others awaken theirs. And you can find her on her website, spiritandspark.com. Welcome again to the show, Dalissa. Now, fifth generation psychic medium. Yes, family path, but what made you choose to follow it? And how did the steps, the kind of stepping stones of your life, lead you to this place? I'd love to hear more about that.
This was not in my life plans. I was a dating coach and a matchmaker when my life changed in 2015. I go to New York at the Omega Institute and was there for the weekend. And on the last night of my trip, I was staying at a friend's house and he gets a phone call that his Aunt Barbara had died unexpectedly. She had fallen down a flight of stairs that day. And that night while I was sleeping, I could see in my dream state, in the astral state, his Aunt Barbara, who I had never met, didn't know. And she had come through to me and I could see her. And without moving her mouth and using telepathy, she asked me if I would tell her nephew that she was okay and she had made it to the other side. And so the next morning I got out of bed, I go out to the kitchen where my friend is, and I tell him what happened. And he asked what she looked like. I described her hair and her facial features. And a couple of days later, when he was at her service, he snapped a photo of her that was on display. And it was exactly as she had looked just a couple of days before in my dream state. So that changed my life. That's where it all started, because I felt that if I was at this retreat, this at Omega Institute in New York, if I was there just being a student and observing and meditating with other students, and this is what came through was Aunt Barbara that had just passed away, what else is trying to come through? So for me, it felt like a calling.
Are you looking for AAA grade jewelry or gemstones? Utter Spirit are those we will recommend. They actually do really wonderful jewelry. They have gifted me really nice lapis lazuli, which is really good for connecting with universal wisdom. And also this shungite beads, which come from Russia, and they're really aren't rare, because a lot of the times you get shungite beads which affect your skin, and these beads have been really nice. My son also loves them, and otter spirit, they give back to nature as well. So that is really nice that they are contributing to the environment, and they also send this intention cards. They're quite nice. This shungite card says, I cleanse myself from harmful energies. And the lapis lazuli card says, I am connected to the infinite wisdom of the universe. So there's information that goes with it, as well as them, producing really good quality jewelry. So I will recommend to connect with Otter Spirit. And the code will be going with this video. So check them out.
It felt like, Dallisa, you sat with your grandmother and heard her stories, and she would get premonitions that she would call her ESP, extrasensory perception. And she could see full body apparitions with her physical eyes walking through her house. So she would often describe who was there and what they were wearing and what color clothing they had on. And so when my gifts came in overnight and I started to get really curious, I felt like this is why I was born, was to activate these gifts to the fullest extent that I could, and not for my own knowledge at home. It really felt like all of my years of business experience had set me up to not only develop the gifts, but also understand how to talk about them in a very grounded way, and how to teach classes that people can understand that aren't too woo-woo. Because sometimes I'll even hear somebody say a term and I'm like, I don't even know what that means, right? So my approach is very grounded. But I knew after that day in August of 2015 that I was blazing a new path. And I started channeling first. And I would just write down the first name, and I would tune into their energy, and I would start writing down everything that I was seeing, hearing, feeling, sensing. And then I would get on the phone with them. Of course, I had permission first, but I got on the phone and I said, okay, don't tell me anything about what's happening in your life right now. Let me just read you everything I channeled. And a lot of people are like, how did you know that? There are things you said that nobody knows about my life. So that's really where it all started.
Thank you, Dalissa. I love the fact that it was so synchronistic. It didn't come from home, even though you had you had generations of family members who were already doing this. It was, you were activated. The actual first encounter was outside of home, which is interesting. Have you had any kind of relationship or connection with your family, with the generations since you started? Is there a connection there?
Yes. So the gift is on my dad's side of the family. My dad is still with us here on Earth. So he and I talk about things all the time regarding downloads, predictions, what he senses, what I'm sensing. My grandmother made her transition several years ago, but she comes in on occasion when I'm working, and that's always a bit fun. I enjoy seeing her and knowing that she's okay. And of course, she's okay. All of our loved ones are okay. And they're over on the other side, learning and growing and exploring and figuring out what they're going to do next. But yeah, so I'd say both here in the physical and connection on the other side. Yeah, and it's quite enjoyable because my grandmother was getting closer to the end of her life when my gifts came in. And in hindsight, it feels like she was passing her gifts over to me before she passed away. It was like passing the baton, like, here you go. I'm going to go ahead and cross over, but you can do this. You've got this. And so, she hasn't been on Earth to witness everything that has happened in the last 10 years. But I know that she's cheering me on, and I know that she's with me, and she likes to help me from her perspective now.
I love that. I also have this connection with my grandparents and my parents. Both my parents have passed, both grandparents on both sides have passed, and they're all with me, especially my father. And he says things to me. He has seen me through a number of events. Kidnapping as a child. He saw me through that. He saw me through a highway robbery. He's with me in times of need and in times of calm. And that is, it's only when we don't understand, or I think the proof is in the pudding, when we have come to experience some of these things our own self, then we are more likely to trust. But it's not something that we are encouraged to do in this physical reality, to really come to trust our intuitive gifts. How do you in your work help your clients to really come to understand their intuition and the messages that they're always receiving from their own higher self and from the guides that we all have?
Excellent question. I love teaching, and I am a firm believer that we all have these gifts and abilities. It's not just me and a few select others that get to experience, deep intuition or psychic awareness. We all can do it. And one of the things I keep teaching to students year after year is the importance of our own frequency. Because if our frequency is high enough, then we will be able to tap into psychic predictions. We'll be able to connect with loved ones or animals on the other side. It's all a frequency match. So it's kind of like a scale. And so if you think of the other side and our loved ones over there, we can think of that as like clear up at the top of the scale. And psychic information is just below that, where we can tap into timelines and what is happening in the world. And then below that is where humans are. And on any given day, depending on what emotional state you're in, what you ate the night before, your frequency will kind of settle somewhere in that lower section of the scale. So the more that you can raise your frequency, the more that you will align with these different realms of psychic information and mediumship. For example, it's kind of like turning the dial on the radio to just the right frequency. And it comes with practicing and building the muscle up and ensuring that you are choosing things that will raise your frequency. So here are a couple of just easy examples. Looking at what you're eating, right? Are you consuming food that is like whole fruits and vegetables, or foods that, or organic, more of like a higher frequency food, right? So you could look at your own diet and kind of see, okay, well, where could I improve this, or where could I eat more whole organic fruits and vegetables, for example? Taking a walk in nature without any music on and just feeling the steps that you're taking as you walk through the forest, or you walk through like a coastline, or you walk through a little park that you have in your town. Try to do that without any sound on, where you're just being with your own self and your own breath, and that will help to raise your frequency. Drinking enough water, getting enough sleep, and even with the water piece, before you drink the water, you can bless it, and you can bless and ask that the water, as you consume it, will help you to raise your frequency. So there's just a couple of easy examples of how to get that intuition amplified so that you are feeling more of those nudges inside of yourself. But yeah, if you keep going higher and higher, then you'll find it easier to start connecting with on purpose, connecting with people that are on the other side. And I'm just feeling called to mention this because I do get this question a lot from individuals that want to hear from a loved one that's passed away, but they don't feel like they have received confirmations or messages, or they want to connect with them more and they want to know how. I would take everything I just said about raising your frequency. The caveat that I would also add into this is when we are in grief, and it's no judgment at all, but when we are in that energy, it will naturally lower the frequency that we are sitting at in most cases. And as you find yourself healing and moving through the process of grief, you'll find you might even start to physically feel lighter. That's your frequency also amplifying. And you may find that you start getting more signs from the other side once you've kind of moved through the grieving process. Because some people think, well, do they forget about me? Are they really there? And I would approach the connection point as you get closer and closer of really stepping out of the grief process.
This is a thing. We all have moments when we go through some trauma. Could be grief, it could be divorce, it could be, moving countries. There's so many things that life presents with all its different flavors. And I totally agree with what you have said, because there is definitely that signature frequency that each of us has in our higher self. I mean, our physical ego self has its frequency. Then we also have a signature frequency of the higher self. As a frequency alchemist working with my clients, it's really about coming to understand that separation and doing the inner work, as you have said, Dalissa, doing that inner work to allow us and the practices, finding that quiet place, making sure we're eating the right foods, making sure we're doing the very simple things with our breath, with our body, because grounding starts with the body. The body is where the nervous system really begins to regulate. The nervous system has a very particular impact on the frequency that ego self is vibrating at. It's changing all the time. Nothing is constant in that physical ego frequency. But the higher self frequency is unchanging. This is our frequency of spirit. And coming to understand those frequencies and really reduce the separation, align them closer together, and understand the way we will receive the messages that come to us. Some of us are visual, some of us are audio, and it could be something about thoughts. You're actually hearing the words. So it's extremely important to see how we are being led. But the bottom line is as Dalissa has said it, which is bringing the two frequencies, the frequency of that physical ego self to a higher place of that higher self. And then we can really begin to reduce the clutter, because there's so much clutter in the day to day. And I know it's a journey. There's nobody that comes to a place where there's no more inner practice to do, because even when you get to a place where you are now in that place of knowing, in that place of emptiness, in that place of presence, of stillness, you will still encounter layers and layers and timelines of different physical ego parts, versions of self that still require you to align that separation, reduce that separation. So it's a journey. It gets deeper and deeper. And it makes for quite an adventure in this physical earth plane. So thank you for that, Dalissa. And when we're talking about how do we get to this place where we are really embracing the higher frequencies, the intuition, what really stops us? I know that fear is a major issue. How do you really support your clients to come to understand the fear? It's always there. It's just how we come to understand it, and also how we come to work with the intuition regardless of the fear that is there. How do you support your clients to work with the two?
Very natural to feel afraid when you're first starting out doing intuitive or psychic work of any kind, or frankly, we probably get scared about doing a lot of things that are brand new. But I have seen a lot of fear with clients and students over the years that want to develop this. And I tell them that they get to be right. And what I mean by that is if you think you can, you can. And if you think you can't, you're right, you can't. So it's getting really clear with ourselves first that we absolutely have these natural abilities and that we all have access to them. We can all use them. And if we think we can, that opens up that door. I feel like there's such a bigger pathway between us and spirit and receiving information. If we believe that we are worthy of receiving it, because that's another piece of this that I've come across, is there have been people that have said, well, who am I? Like, who am I to get information? Like, why would spirit be talking to me? Why would I hear something, see something, feel something that would be, psychic in nature? And I think the journey to self-worth is an ingredient in this. And so if you're somebody that's listening to this that wants to be able to connect in, first step, believe that you can. Number two, remember that you're worthy of being able to do this. You were born worthy. There isn't anything you have to go say or do in order for you to be granted permission. It's literally available right now, today, for you to start growing and building within yourself. And it does take practice. It's like any other muscle. And the more that we sit with it and the intention of wanting to connect and doing things like guided meditation and journaling, then that muscle will grow and develop more quickly if we're doing those things. And we will get results much faster. One of the things that is important when you are developing your gifts is practicing with other people. And I would go a step further and say practicing on someone you don't know, because it can be hard to read people that you know because you know too much about them. And so it's much easier, in my experience, to try to psychically answer a question, for example, for someone else that I don't know anything about, because then I can trust the subtlety of what I'm seeing, hearing, feeling, experiencing, and I can say it to them and bravely, courageously say it to them. And you can say it in a way of, this is what I'm picking up on. Let me go ahead and say this to you. And I'd like to hear how this resonates with you. How can you apply what I am getting into your own life, into this question that you're asking? But practicing on strangers is much, much easier. Of course, ones that are willing and open to it. But when you're practicing for yourself, I would recommend doing a guided meditation or listening to binaural beats, like an audio file, and write down on the piece of paper at the very top. I usually say spirit team, which includes my angels and guides and ancestors and beings of white light. I say, spirit team, what do I need to know today? And usually I write that down before I go into the meditation. So I go in and do the meditation or the binaural beats audio file. And then I come out of it and I just write down everything that I am bringing through my normal senses and my psychic senses, and not judging anything that I'm writing down, just letting it free flow. And I would get a new journal. You can get one for, in the US, we can get them for like $1 at the store. Get a new one and just have it be like the journal that you use, that once a day, if you're really trying to do this and get it going quickly, or even once a week, where you make it that practice where you're asking, what do I need to know today? And then you can look back in that same notebook or journal and read what it is that has come through. And that can be connection into your higher self. That can be connection into your spirit team. It works, either way. But that would be a way to strengthen your own muscle as you are developing your gifts and abilities.
we can come to understand, as you've said, what we're vibrating at, because we're always vibrating. Our frequency, we're always vibrating. And knowing what to do when we feel contracted is so key. And we may need to do it several times a day. As we practice it, we need to do it less. But knowing what to do and being dedicated to it, I think is so key, because there is a relentless nature about this physical reality that, I read that we have over 60,000 to 90,000 thoughts a day going through our heads. And a lot of those thoughts are not particularly life affirming thoughts. So we need to learn about how to shift those thoughts when they come, which is what my book is about, the Daily Soul Bytes. I published it in 2020, and it was republished by Bola Press, a division of A House, in 2023. And he's talking about the different perspectives that we all have within us, the lower perspectives of fear and the higher perspectives of love and gratitude and forgiveness. And we are really being called to understand that we have this perspective within us. When something comes to our mind that is a negative thought or is not a life-affirming thought, we know that we can also, and in that same moment, find that life-affirming thought, not bypassing the negative thought, but knowing that we have a choice, and understanding it, understanding the meaning of the negative thought, and knowing that we can align as quickly as we feel ready to do. So understanding that, the frequencies within us. And I want to talk about frequencies a little bit more, because a lot of us don't realize how much it affects everything that we do. The law of attraction is based on the frequency that we hold. Could you talk a bit about how you use frequency, or your perspective on frequency in your work?
I feel like it's one of the core pieces of my work, what I love to talk about, how I illustrate the law of attraction. You just said it. It's, what you hold inside of yourself is the vibration that you are going to attract in. And I know some people will hear that and say, well, I never asked for, this, and this that was bad in my life. And I'm not saying we consciously ask for the lower things to come in, but I do think that when we have things that could be perceived as negative or challenging, that there is something that we are attracting in with that challenge or roadblock, because we are in an advanced classroom called Earth School. And we don't really learn much when things are great and nothing is, negative, or no roadblocks are in the way. So we, as humans, go through these different challenges in order to grow and evolve, which is why I feel like we incarnate here. And so bringing something into your life like that, likely through your own frequency or something with the subconscious mind, that is likely an invitation. And maybe not such a nice invitation sometimes, but an invitation to go deep within yourself to find the core of why that is a bad thing in your life. Like, what is it amplifying or agitating in your life, right? And I had a mentor years ago who told me that anytime that we are annoyed or mad or sad, name any kind of negative emotion, that it will tie back to three core energies. And once I learned this, it opened up my eyes to how I see energy and how it's working within me. So the three energies are, if I'm upset and I'm trying to figure out why, I ask myself, is this me trying to find approval, which is self-worth and love and being liked or being loved? So approval is the first energy. The next one is safety, that I'm upset because there's something about this that doesn't feel that safe. And then the third one is control. There's something about this that feels like it's out of control, and I want to feel like I'm in control, and I don't feel like I am. So approval, safety, and control are the three core energies. And when we are upset, we take radical accountability for ourselves and our emotions. then when an emotion comes up that we don't want to feel or experience, I think one of the quickest ways to dig in there and find out what's causing that is to get to the energy root, finding out, is it one, two, or all three of those energies? And then the antidote to that is to give it to ourselves. So if it's that I'm upset because I don't feel lovable and approved of right now based on this current thing that I'm going through, the antidote is to give it to myself. So I would sit and do affirmations for self-love, self-worth. I would think about a time where I really felt lovable and worthy and take myself back into that memory. So whatever one, two, or three, and it can be multiple of those, then take yourself into that energy, and that's how you can work with that and heal it, so that the energy isn't like a thorn on a rose inside of you that keeps like poking up and keeps agitating you. And if we can lean into our emotions with absolute curiosity as to why am I feeling this, then that ultimately leads, in my belief, to freedom, to real freedom inside of ourselves and how we operate in our lives and in the world. And so energy is everything. And when we are in those denser, heavier emotions, it's not about trying to quickly move through it. It's more about getting curious and understanding why we're upset, and then giving ourselves the anecdote of giving that to ourselves. I can even feel it like psychically as I'm saying it, that it feels like it just kind of like effervescent, like bubbles in a soda. It just kind of like pops and fizzes as we go within and do that healing, so that we are no longer tied down to that negative emotion that we're feeling. And then that ultimately helps to raise the frequency.
Thank you so much, Dalisa. There is such a deep understanding that you have, and I think it's so key that you're talking about energy being in everything. Reminds me of the David Hawkins scale of energy frequency, which is coming from a very low level, from zero upward, zero when we're feeling the anger and the anxiety and grief, and going up to enlightenment, love enlightenment, going up to 700 and above. So we're always vibrating. We have a frequency no matter what. We are energy beings vibrating no matter what we are experiencing. So understanding that is so key, that we cannot get away from having a particular frequency. And it's now about how do we understand it and how do we get to a place of coherence with the higher frequencies through our practices, through our understanding, through our love, self-love, through the healing that we continue to do. And it's about levels, because you may have a version of self. I tell my clients all the time, I do have a quantum Reiki soul cycle awakening container where I support my clients one-to-one for a period of 8 weeks, and really come to understand the frequency that particular version of self is vibrating at, and what that version of self is creating, is manifesting. Because whatever frequency we are at, we manifest what is coherent with that particular frequency. So you may find that there is, you're a married person and you're going to work, and your partner is home and they are not particularly in a good place, and you get to work and you do certain practices to really give yourself love. You change your frequency without communicating with your partner at all, and you get back home and you see a different version of your partner, because the frequency that you are now vibrating at will call out a different version of your partner. The frequency we are vibrating at is what is creating our experiences. It's what is creating coherence with particular selves, particular versions of selves, for our own self and for others. And I want you to talk a bit more about this, Dalisa, in terms of manifestation. How is, first of all, how do you support your clients to manifest the kinds of experiences, the kinds of lifestyles that they prefer to manifest. Because we're manifesting all the time, but how do we come to manifest our preferred outcomes?
Yes, I think that such a brilliant question because I get asked it a lot, but I also see a lot of fear when someone will ask me, like, how do I manifest this house that I want to buy? Or how do I manifest moving to Switzerland or whatever they want to manifest. But when I get into their energy, it often feels like they are the one holding themselves back. So there's 3 steps that I talk about with manifestation. Number 1, you have to know what it is you're actually trying to manifest. And it's not the dollar amount or whatever currency for whatever country you live in. What is it that you're trying to get with that money? Like, what's the end goal? And visualize that. So get really, really clear on what that is. Step number 2, going back to self-worth, you have to know you're worthy of having it. And this is where a lot of people, in my opinion, get caught up and entangled, is they can come up with what it is they want to manifest. They have that clarity. They've got it dialed in. But then there's something inside of them, either a voice, the internal thoughts that we've been discussing, that they hear those things inside of their head, or they think about the times when someone said they couldn't have something, or who are you to try to dream that big, right? So they start to believe that they can't have it. And even somebody listening to this, it's like, oh yeah, I believe I can have it. I believe I deserve it. Try to dig just a little bit deeper and see if there's any kind of residual energy in there that's telling you that you will not be able to achieve this. Or if you get it, you won't be able to keep it. And you even see that with people with money. They can bring it in, but then it leaves as quickly as it comes in. And, looking at that energy as, what do I believe about money? And even considering today, what is my new story about money? And we can even point to people that win the lotto. A lot of us have heard, curse of the lotto winner, and people win a bunch of money and then it's gone, right? They lose it, or they end up in jail, or things terrible happen in their life. And I think it illustrates this point that it was easy to win the lotto for that person. It happened, it came into their life, but there was likely something happening in their internal dialogue and energy that said, it's not safe for me to have this. It's not safe for me to keep this. I'm not worthy of it. And a lot of people end up either giving it away or spending it on a bunch of things, and then they don't have any money left to actually support their day-to-day lifestyle. And then the third part is, so you have clarity, you're worthy of having it. And then number 3 is that you take action alongside the universe taking action. Because you can do steps 1 and 2 at home with your door closed, but having it actually happen may be a challenge if you're not opening up the doors and the windows and creating pathways and movement for the universe to move within. And so it's just like somebody saying, well, I want a spouse. I want to get married. And I'll ask them, like, okay, well, what are you doing? And they say, oh, well, I'm not really doing anything. Well, I highly doubt, unless you're ordering a lot of food delivery, I highly doubt they're going to show up at your doorstep. So you're going to have to go out and create opportunities for that energy to align with you and become that match.
Because we always have opportunities around us. I always say something like, you have a range of opportunities in front of you, and you pick one, And that will also unfold another set of opportunities. So we never run out of opportunities. There are always and options, and it all depends on the worth, as you've said, Dalisa, the beliefs that we hold, the perspectives that we hold, the narratives that we hold. And I love the work of Robert Keegan, which is the adult development theory, which I use in my programs. I have a certified caregiver resilience program, which talks about how we can come to really become comfortable with the multiple perspectives within us, because we sometimes feel uncomfortable when a part of us believes we can do something and there's another part of us that believes we cannot. And everyone has those parts that have mastered something and parts that are still learning, parts that don't have a clue. I have parts within me that don't have a clue about podcasting. I may do a very nice interview that I feel, a part of me feels I've done a really good job. And then I hear a voice of another part that says, what kind of thing do you think you did there? So there are always that range of perspectives within us. And coming to really understand those perspectives, coming to have clarity, being very clear, allowing those parts to become trusting of the clarity that the parts that have mastered that experience have. There are parts of us that have experience and are masters, and there are parts of us that we need to kind of allow to come into that space, to hold space for them. And it's only through love. Love, forgiveness, trauma healing, trauma recovery are the things that allow us to really get that deeper clarity and be inspired to take actions in ways that allow us to really experience better outcomes. So I do love, the work you're doing, Dalissa. I also want to ask, we all have different timelines that we're jumping, multiple timelines per second. How do we come to work with these timelines and allow the predictions that we get? Why do predictions matter when we're jumping into multiple different timelines, which are really possibilities? The timelines we're jumping into, the timelines consciousness is jumping through, is based on the frequency that we are holding within our own self, that coherence between the higher self and the physical ego self. How do these timelines matter when it comes to the predictions that you would be giving, for instance, to your clients?
Yes. I love that we get to talk about this today because there's something that really shifted about a month ago. I've been making predictions for a decade and have really enjoyed doing those predictions. But Spirit came in about a month ago with a very clear download that unfolded, within a 24 to 48 hour period that said predictions were to help people get prepared for what is unfolding and what's going to be happening in the world. Now you are in the activation phase. You are meant to take what you have learned. Some of us were new, some of us, we've been doing this a really long time. Take what we've learned and really bring it into the body, bring it into our daily practices. Look at our own frequency and look at our own emotions. Spirit was basically saying that to consume the content isn't enough anymore. Now it's this space of, now what are you going to do with that information? And I think it goes to your point with this question. There are so many things shifting and changing that to make a prediction, and I've made some really interesting predictions that end up coming true. But to make a prediction, there has to be like almost this asterisk next to it that's like timing varies because sometimes when I look at something that I want to make a prediction on, I will see the details and it will feel really close. And then I could look at it again, a week or two later, and then it feels farther away. So it's always feeling like it's in this flux of energy back and forth. And part of that consciousness and all that is that one choice here affects another thing over here. And I do believe that in this lifetime, we have a mix of fate and free will. And so as we make a choice, any one of us, it causes a ripple that causes the bigger ripple, and it adjusts what's happening with different events unfolding in your life and in the world. I do think we can still make predictions, but because we're living in this wild time right now where everything is moving so fast, I would say the timing of a prediction is going to get harder, because it almost feels when I'm in the channeling, like the speed of lightning, like going back and forth, back and forth. And it can be challenging from my perspective to nail down a specific when that hasn't always been the case. The when has been relatively simple and easy in the past, but in this new heightened consciousness and energy that is the collective right now, I think getting the when will be a challenge until it calms back down again and grounds more. But I don't think that's going to happen, at least for the next several years. And so this is a time that we each individually can ground within ourselves and ground to the earth and still keep connected to the higher frequencies. But if you try to go into that collective energy to get information, don't be alarmed if your experience feels hard to grab a hold of or feels like it's moving really quickly. It has only started doing that rather recently, I would say in the last 6 months.
I'm enjoying this conversation talking about frequency and manifestation and the power of intuition. And I do want to ask you if you have any final words for us today, because I know that you do have to dash off.
Yes. One is a quote from the poet Rumi that says, "Live life as if everything is rigged in your favor." And that means anything that comes into your life, the good, the bad, the in-between, that everything comes with a gift. So live life as if everything is rigged in your favor. And as you were asking that question, I was seeing psychically, encouraging people to work more with the dream state. And for me, before bed, I do 3 things. I either listen to a spiritual class or I do a meditation. I write in my journal, and I read at least one chapter out of any book of my choosing. And doing all 3 of those is actually pretty quick, but it preps me and my energy for the dream state. And there's so much work that can happen during our sleeping time, not only premonitions, but also connecting with loved ones or connecting with guides or finding a solution to a question that you have. And if there is something that you're trying to decide in your life right now, write it out on a piece of paper, the question, fold it up and stick it underneath your pillow and let it be under your pillow. And as you ask that question before you go to sleep, and see what kind of work you can do while you're asleep with your mind, your conscious and your unconscious working together to help you to come up with a clearer pathway and a clearer answer forward.
This is so key, allowing ourselves to really use the tools that are around us, including the spiritual tools and the spiritual help, to really get us to that place of understanding, a place of coherence. It is that coherence that will really allow us to live our best lives. And where can people find you when they want to connect with you, Dallisa?
I have everything over at my website. That is at spiritandspark.com, all spelled out. And my social medias are on there, my classes, everything. And I would love to connect and hear from everybody that's been in the audience today and Yeah, I'd love to help encourage them to trust their own inner guidance. It's there and it's got a lot of wisdom to share. So thank you again, Bola, for having me on your show.
Thank you for joining me, Dalisa. I love the coherence. I love the resonance. So thank you so much, Dalisa. And I want to thank our audience for joining us as always and to encourage you to connect with Dalisa. This is really about developing the psychic gifts of intuition that really support us to gain deeper clarity in our day to day. And I look forward to seeing you on the very next episode of the Daily Soul Bytes Show. Bye bye.